Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 121 of the In a Nutshell podcast. I'm your host, Sean Vowells. I've got Joe Meade with me, and tonight we're doing just about everything. Week 11 recap, Week 12 preview, a basketball update. Joe, lots happened here in the Big Ten since we last came on here. We've got most basketball teams playing 3 games. We had some really good football games this weekend. And let's just get right into it. Friday night in Los Angeles, USC beats Northwestern 38-17, 21-14 Trojans at half. USC pulls away in the second half to keep their college football playoff hopes alive. But this is what we asked for from USC, and they came through.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty unspectacular first half from the Trojans. I thought statistically they dominated, just didn't cash in on a few chances. I know the viral moment was the fake putter thing. I'm not going to really insert my opinion there. You could use your own deduction skills there. But I do think USC kind of sleptwalked through this week of preparation. It was pretty clear to me. I think they knew they were better than Northwestern at anything above their C minus performance, which I thought was most of the first half was going to get it done, and it certainly did. Now, USC, no secret here, Sean. Their next 3 games are going to determine their fate. Iowa at home, and then at Oregon. We're going to judge USC after those games. This Northwestern game, if we were judging them after, it would indicate that their season up to, I mean, it would totally indicate a seasonal failure if they lost to Northwestern. Let's just call it what it is.
They were able to take care of business, and we'll get into both of those teams' next games later. Let's turn the page to Saturday, Joe. Let's go to West Lafayette, Indiana, where Purdue took on the number one team in the country. The Boilermakers did have a 3-0 lead after the first quarter, but after that, Ohio State cruised to an easy 34-10 victory. Jeremiah Smith over 100 yards, saying over 300. Just more of the same here from Ohio State.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty boring performance from Ohio State, given what they've done this year. I certainly think that they held a lot back in this game, and Ryan Day did say, "When we have to turn it on, we will." I don't know if that's a certainty. I certainly believe they have the capabilities to do that. Certainly against West Lafayette, even being down 3-0, they didn't have to. I thought it was pretty interesting. We didn't have to see way too much from the offense. Jeremiah Smith, the highlight reel game. Um, I think they're slowly, as we've been saying, getting Max Clare more involved. I think Ohio State's offense this year is actually better, receiving core wise, quarterback wise, at least aerial threat wise, and that at tight end this year. The one thing is going to be the running game. Can they run in games that are going to be closer? Perhaps that could be in 2 or 3 weeks in Ann Arbor, or that'll be later on in Indianapolis, and certainly the college football playoff. I think that's the one thing this Buckeye offense has to answer for me.
And in terms of their offense, Joe, Carnell Tate did not play in this game. It was pretty. It wasn't really sure why. Apparently, something happened in warmups. I don't expect that to be that much of a problem. And Ohio State has two UCLA and Rutgers at home before they go up north to the Big House. So I would still look for Tate to not, if there's any sort of concern. I don't think he plays a part in either of the next 2 weeks. But while losing your second best receiver is a negative, you have the best wide receiver in college football too. So I don't think it'll make that big of a difference. Running the ball for them, yards per carry wise isn't bad, but it just never, they never get to 100 yards as a team. And especially considering how often they're winning by a lot, I would think that maybe they try and do that a little bit in these upcoming weeks. See if you can get somebody, over 100 yards. And, they're scoring touchdowns, those running backs, so when they're asked to, make plays, they're doing that. But, yeah, that is the one concern there. But, they could probably run the table without a great running game. That's just how good their team is from every position, really. All right, Joe, let's go to number 2 in the country. That would be my Indiana Hoosiers going to State College to play Penn State, and this one was a really up and down game. Indiana was up 20-10 at the end of the third quarter. Looked like it was going to be or 20-7 actually, was going to be a really easy win for Indiana until Penn State came alive. The running backs got going, and they ended up taking the lead. And then Indiana and Fernando Mendoza come down the field with a game winning drive, and Omar Cooper with one of the best catches that you'll ever see. It ended up being a pretty close call here, but the Hoosiers get the job done.
Yeah, I thought it was an outstanding last drive from Indiana. One thing I will say, I don't know why people are. I'm not stunned that the game was close. I was a little surprised, but Penn State still is a talented team. I know the Drew Aller situation was really tough for them, but I do want to point out James Franklin constructed a really good roster. I thought Terry Smith called a pretty good game. Even the last drive, I know everyone was screaming for them to be more aggressive, which is easy to say in hindsight. Their defense, and Sean will attest to this, was doing a phenomenal job all day, getting in Mendoza's face, sacking him on several occasions. There were a few plays Mendoza made that were Heisman worthy just by avoiding a sack, not necessarily doing anything insane after. So I give a lot of credit to Penn State's defense, Jim Knowles, Andy Kolnicki as well. I thought they definitely deserved to win this game. Had if not for the last drive, if the game ended right there, uh, I would have had no problem with Penn State winning from a football perspective. For Indiana, I think it's a little concerning that this is the first really, really good pass rush they faced aside from Iowa, and they got home a lot. Uh, do I still think Indiana's a really good team? Of course. I just think it's something to nitpick if we're going to talk about them as a national title contender. But
Yeah,
I'm going to give Sean the floor here.
the offensive line play was a little bit alarming. Two starters were out, and they lost a third one in the game. And I do Evans and Mikulski will be back in there, so hopefully that is something that can be taken care of. And Elijah Surratt, wide receiver one, probably the second or third best wide receiver in the Big Ten. He was also out. Two, Charlie Becker, who had 7 career catches before today, had 7 and 118 in this one, and some of them were really impressive catches, including the one that sort of set up, the game-winning catch by Cooper, the one down the sideline by the 10. But I actually think Indiana, like the whole discourse around this game, clearly are coming from people who did not watch it. Like Indiana was the better team in this one for the entire way, and Penn State only got their offense going when they got a crucial block from the back referee. This is going to be a 4 or 5 yard rush for Singleton, and Pons can't get him because the ref is in the way, and he takes it all the way to the 1 yard line and then scores, and then you have the interception, and then they scored again. But I think Indiana deserved to win this one, and people are really not giving Penn State enough credit here. This is the best game that they played all year. Grunkmeyer actually was forced to throw the ball down the field quite a bit here, and he actually made some really, really big throws. And Joe, without knowing off the top of my head who they have up next, I think 6-6 is on the table for them. And I
Yeah, they
know
have Michigan State,
they haven't won
Nebraska
a
at home,
power
and Rutgers.
they haven't won a Power 4 game yet. But when you talk about Michigan State and Rutgers, who have one Big Ten win between the two of them, and Nebraska is a backup quarterback, like they could totally do that. But Indiana gets through it. You have Wisconsin and Purdue before Indianapolis. But yeah, Mendoza has had 3 pretty bad interceptions this year in their 3 big road games. And instead of sulking and letting that define the game, he's come back the next possession and scored a game-winning touchdown. And, that's sort of the story of the season there. All right, Joe, let's talk about those 2 teams that Indiana did beat. They faced off in a rainy Iowa City. And, for every criticism of Big Ten football, this one was probably it in its best. I mean, what a great game. You look at this 18-16 score. Oregon ends up winning by 2. A safety early in the first quarter proves to be the difference. But I actually thought this was a really good game, really fun to watch. And because of the rain, the deep ball sort of became not a factor, and Oregon was able to buckle down and still get the job done playing a style of football that they are not that good at.
Oregon, I know people are going to discredit the Penn State win because of the 3-6 record. Oregon's showing a little clutch gene this year. I don't think they had to show at all last year. I know they had the close win against Ohio State, kind of that weird one at Camp Randall. But there have been 2 games where late in the game or late in overtime, they were down and had to make plays. And Dante Moore and the offense has made each one without total devastating mistake either. I know people are going to pick apart Dante Moore's overall play in this game. I think that's pretty fair. I think in the conditions, though, it's kind of like I throw my hands up and say, "What do you really
He
expect?"
had 5 or 6 like perfect passes that were dropped because
And
of the
that too.
right through his hands. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
but
want to give credit to Tosh Lupoy too. I know Iowa offense uh, historically is not necessarily that hard to stop. I think Tim Lester this year's done a fantastic job with this offensive unit, and the fact Tosh Lupoy held Gronowski to only 25 total yards on the ground was a really outstanding job. I believe he only got a 7 or 8 yard run was his longest run. I thought if they allowed even one or two of those runs, that's probably the difference between a winner or a loss here for the Ducks. So I think defensively, Oregon is for real. I think maybe they don't necessarily have the talent they had last year, but I do think they have the execution. And I think in each of these games, they've made plays when they've had to. So, including the Indiana one, Sean. Let's be fair to Oregon's defense. I don't think they were necessarily at fault in that game if I were going to point fingers. So credit to Oregon and Iowa. One thing I want to say is I really if they want to be the soft team, maybe scheduling the Iowa State game biannually might be the move.
yeah, I actually think Iowa has taken a big step from last year, and they might end up with the same record. But Gronowski's been really good. He's not been 100% all year. He's still the best quarterback they've had since way back. I don't even want to give out a name because Gronowski's been really good. I thought they won this game, Joe, and Gronowski took that 4th and goal one in. They have the pass that gets tipped up in the air, and they think they get the 2-point conversion. And for how great of a call Omar Cooper's toe tap was, I mean, he was nowhere close to inbounds. So instead of
Yeah.
up 3, you're up 1, and Oregon really, you know, it, they got Sappington to a 39-yarder, and I guess that's not a freebie in college, but he's a good kicker. He was going to make that. So I think Oregon adjusted really quickly that their quick pass game wasn't really going to work after they had a few drops. But they buckled down and they got a really impressive win here. I think Oregon is a really interesting team, Joe, when it comes to where they'll be ranked. And I think the committee's been a little harsh on them. They have one loss to the number 2 team in the country, and they're probably not going to have a chance to really change that. They do play USC away, right?
No, they play them at
At
home.
home.
So
So if they were to blow them out, does that push them over a Georgia or a Texas Tech or Notre Dame? Probably not. And they're not going to be going to Indianapolis. So I actually let's look to see them put some style points here coming in because I think they're going to want it. And then the team that they played in the last week, Joe, took one of the more unexpected losses in college football this season. Washington goes up to Camp Randall, and just days after a public statement of, that Luke Fickell will be back next year and he'll get support, Wisconsin pulls off a crazy upset, 13-10 over Washington. And Joe, Wisconsin had a number of, I believe, 5 players threw a pass in this game, and the leading passer was the place kicker on a fake field goal. He was 1 for 1 for 23 yards. They had a bunch of other quarterbacks who did not get to 23 yards, but with all we've seen in college football this year, this might be one of the most surprising results.
yeah, and I'm not going to make an excuse because I've repeatedly picked Washington, which is now a dead playoff hope, barring the miracle of miracles, which probably won't happen. I think this game's a little different if Jonah Coleman doesn't go out so early. I think that really stifled Washington's because let's face it, Plan A was not to play in these conditions. Their Plan B was probably to rely on Coleman and Demond Williams. Adam Muhammad, I think, is a good enough running back, but the fact they ran Demond like 19 times, and I know only like probably 60% of that was designed. It kind of speaks volumes to the void they were missing with Jonah Coleman in this game. Denzel Boston also goes down. This was probably a nightmare situation for Washington. Not only losing, I don't think these guys are going to be out long term, but losing 2 of the 3 of your trio is a total disaster. And I think Demond, aside from his game in Ann Arbor, I thought he did some good things against Ohio State in this game. couldn't do much without his two weapons. I felt like he had to play hero ball. He missed a lot of throws, and the conditions weren't great. And credit to Wisconsin, Sean, that they found ways to win. And five players throwing a pass, Carter Smith, the true freshman, being the sole passer with over like five attempts, 3 of 12. I mean, they kind of just threw. For a basketball analogy, they Eric Musselman a game plan and it worked.
Yeah. And look, I think just about everybody that had any sort of idea with what was going on with Wisconsin this year was pretty shocked to see them publicly back their coach. And the players immediately backed it up. Like, if there's ever a sign that it was the right decision this quickly, I mean, Washington is a good football team. And, they fall to 6-3. Wisconsin gets their third win. And Joe, there's a way that Luke Fickell finds a real quarterback next year, and Wisconsin's a pretty good team. They've had some bad luck with injuries over the past few years. This year, with Edwards not really playing a part in the season, but yeah, I mean, what a crazy win for Wisconsin, and I'm happy for them because they've had a pretty tough go about it the last few years. All right, Joe. Maryland, Rutgers. It was the Scarlet Knights that pick up their second Big Ten win of the year, 35-20. Antoine Raymond, 240 yards rushing. Um, and Rutgers 5-5, a serious chance of going bowling. Calic Manis, 4 touchdowns. Ian Strong, 3 of them. And Rutgers at home. We were looking for them to sort of take control of their season, and really they had to win this one to get to a bowl, and they took care of business.
Yeah, it sets up potentially a bowl eligibility bowl between Penn State and Rutgers, week 14, last game of the regular season. So certainly something to play for there. I think Shiano kind of is content now winning solely on offense for this team. Definitely not going to be a shift in his philosophy, but I think letting it rip with Anthony Kaliakmanis, in spite of the two picks and then Antoine Raymond running it, it kind of reminded me of Rutgers like in the mid 2000s, riding the run game, using the pass as like just to keep you honest. Because in modern football, we use the run to keep people honest. Rutgers is doing the exact opposite. And Anthony Kaliakmanis, by the way, I still think he's been one of the more underrated QBs around the country.
Yeah, his
Malik,
season stats are looking pretty good. And now he has played 10 games, and a lot of quarterbacks have played 9. But yeah, he's had a really solid season.
yeah, I thought Malik Washington on the ground was electric in this game for the Terrapins. Unfortunately, sub 100 yards passing in 28 attempts. There's no way to sugarcoat that. I think going forward, what has to happen for Maryland is they just need more continuity. It's pretty clear. You have a true freshman out there. You have a bunch of guys that I think started well, but I think let's face it, Sean, September Maryland part whatever is continuing. I don't think I don't think I think a consistent problem with that program is they just have to gel better. And I don't know the solution. I clearly they don't know either. They get paid a lot more money than I do to figure that out. So, really good win for Rutgers. I can't say this game at all shocked me. Um, to me, it kind of played out exactly how me and Sean thought it would.
All right, Joe. Well, we ended off Big Ten football in Week 11 with a battle between Nebraska and UCLA at the Rose Bowl. And remember, Dylan Raiola out for the season. It was T.J. Lateef making his debut at quarterback for Nebraska, and he looked really solid. He only throws the ball 15 times with 205 yards and 3 touchdowns. Emmett Johnson adds 129 on the 129 on the ground, 103 through the air, and 3 total touchdowns. Um, I think there is a downgrade, but I don't know if it was. I don't know if anybody saw this coming from Lateef and the Nebraska offense to not really miss a beat, but they get the job done and move to 7-3.
I was really shocked. This is probably the game that, aside from Washington, around the country surprised me the most. I didn't think Latif was incompetent. I think the shake he got against USC was really unfair to come in literally cold against in probably your biggest home game in a while. I think with the week of preparation, Matt Rule and Dana Holgerson did a phenomenal job preparing him. This is a great game plan. I don't think they anticipated Emmett Johnson to have like I don't know, like 230 of their 350 total yards, but they certainly will take that. I think Emmett Johnson all year shot has kind of been inconsistent because of the Nebraska O line. I think for him to string together a performance like this is indicative that they could perhaps use that through the rest of the season. I think Latif game managing is going to have to be with the lead. I don't
Yeah.
know if this is going to be successful at Happy Valley. I don't know how successful it'll be against Iowa, but certainly they have chances in those games. This idea that Rayola's out and there goes their season in terms of potentially getting to 8 or 9 wins, I think that was a freezing cold take. And I think Nebraska probably enters their last 2 games a lot more confident than they would have shot. I think this could be the first year they go back-to-back bowl games. I know they were 7-6 last year, 7-3 now. Can they get 2 more wins than they did last year? And everyone wonders what they're up to next year. I think that's a lot to play for year 3 of Matt Rule's tenure. So a lot of credit to him and Dana Holgerson. UCLA, I think they are what they are. I think they had a little run. I still think they're a way better football team than they were at the end of August. But really unfortunate that they, started slow and it kind of never could come out of that hole.
Yeah, I was impressed with Nebraska. I do think the playbook is completely different with Latif. Like Rayola, there's no play that's not available at any down. I think they obviously wanted to get the running game going, and then when it did, you get into some, you know, not third and obvious, and Latif, was able to make some plays. And they had the offense going early. I thought they probably could have saw the game out a little more, just 7 points in the second half. But there's a real way. Like there is a winning formula here for Nebraska, and Matt Rule probably had to shake things up. Like the way that they're going to play is going to be different the rest of the way, and even if they do, you know, lose two, they still improve over last season, and then with him signing an extension, he's going to be back next year. So you'd expect them to keep going on the way up. But that is week 11 here in the Big Ten. And Joe, let's flip it over to week 12 really quick. We're doing pretty good for time here. And we're going to start off week 12 in the Big Ten on Friday night at Autzen. We've got a sneaky 6-3 Minnesota team going out to play 8-1 Oregon. Oregon is minus 25.5. Feels like Minnesota has sort of avoided the spotlight here in the Big Ten this year. They're 4-2. They've got a real chance to make a dent into the conference's playoff hopes for a third and potentially even fourth team here. But Joe, Oregon gets one short day of rest. What are you looking for here?
Yeah, Minnesota off the bye, I think, is going to be probably first week was relief after that Michigan State overtime debacle for both teams. Let's call it what it is. And then coming into this game, I think they're just going to try play spoiler here. If PJ Fleck has a spoiler game in him, this would be it. I certainly don't think he does. I think their Iowa performance still lingers large. And aside from the last drive of regulation and the one in OT, that offense had a lot of problems. So I think offensive line wise, Oregon is going to take advantage of that Minnesota O line. I think Oregon, with Dante Moore protecting the ball, should win this game. I don't know if they cover the spread, but I anticipate like a 42-20 type victory for Oregon. Um, I don't think Minnesota's culture is in question. I don't think they'll necessarily quit. I just think it's a talent problem here.
Yeah, I'm going Oregon 34, Minnesota 10. I just, that spread is really high. And I think if Oregon wins by 20 plus, like that's going to be a good performance. I mean, this Minnesota team's not bad. They're not good either. So if Oregon shows up to play, they should win this game by 15 plus. But, crazier things do happen on Friday nights in the Big Ten. But I don't see it happening here. I think Oregon, like I said earlier, really needs to sort of put a stamp on the end of the year here if they don't want to get stuck in that 8-9 game of the college football playoff. And it's a good opportunity here. Like Minnesota's not a bad team, so if they win this game like 45-7, like that is going to look pretty good to the committee. But all right, Joe, let's go to Saturday here. We've got 2 noon games. They both involve our teams. I'm going to start with mine because they're listed on top. Wisconsin, coming off of their first Big Ten win of the year, heads to Memorial Stadium for Senior Day, where they'll play number 2 Indiana. Indiana 29.5 point favorites here after the scare last week after Wisconsin's big win. What do you see happening here?
I don't see Wisconsin A having five players throw passes or B having much success if they're going to have to ride Carter Smith in this one. I think that's a grueling environment for a true freshman to walk into Indiana. Aside from what Ethan Grunkmeyer had to walk into playing a night game at Kinnick, this is probably even worse considering the quality of Indiana's defense and the fact that they had their, I don't want to say disappointing, probably one of their more lackluster performances all year. I think that's a very fair statement. So I think Indiana tries to establish Mendoza again. I don't think he'll be getting sacked as many times by Wisconsin's D line. I think their front against the run has been good. I do think against the pass they're highly susceptible. So look for Mendoza to probably have another Heisman type stat line, and Wisconsin to have something not even 20% of that. So give me the Hoosiers to win 42-3. I don't see Wisconsin scoring much, if at all, in this game, to be honest with you, Sean.
Yeah, defense for Indiana is the key here. They didn't. I mean, they only gave up 24 points to Penn State, but like Penn State has a good offensive line, and they noticeably got way less pressure than before. So heat up the quarterback, whoever that is, make them turn the ball over. Like I think they're going to be smelling blood in the water here, the Indiana defense, and I think they're going to go for a few kill shots and really try and give their offense some good field position. I think for Indiana, they need to figure out what to do on second down. They got like a lot of good runs on first down last week, and they got to 2nd and 3 and 2nd and 4, and then they got sacked, and then you're back to square one. Like mix it up a little bit on second down if you can establish a run on first down, and then that'll open up the playbook the rest of the way. I think Elijah Surratt will probably not play in this one. He played one or two plays 2 weeks ago, whoever that was against, I'm forgetting, and then he didn't play last week, so might have to be the Charlie Becker and Omar Cooper show again, but I think the goal for the Hoosiers should be to get the starters off at the end of the third quarter and then let some of the seniors and Alberto Mendoza cook a little bit. But I'm going to go Indiana 52, Wisconsin 10. All right, Joe, the other game at noon is the site of the big noon kickoff show. Michigan heads up to Chicago, one of the cathedrals of American sports, Wrigley Field. Michigan minus 11.5 here, 7-2, looking to keep their playoff hopes alive. Northwestern looking to clinch bowl eligibility. What are you looking for in this one?
I think it's going to be probably a game they're going to want to reestablish Bryce Underwood's confidence. That doesn't mean he's going to have a Mendoza or Julian Sayin type stat line. I think anything above 200 yards is what Michigan's going to shoot for. I don't think, though, that should be their intention because, as we've seen, Northwestern's been a little frisky team. They were close to winning at Nebraska. Certainly, USC had to elevate their game after that lackluster first half they had. Um, and then Northwestern, I know the Penn State one still, like, people will roll their eyes. That wasn't a game many gave them a chance to win. So this is a frisky team. I think Preston Stone, although he's thrown the most interceptions in the conference, he's not afraid to let it rip. That's what that stat line tells me more than anything. Too often, Northwestern conservative QBs are conservative with the ball. I don't think you're going to see much of that. I do think Northwestern's going to try to establish the run game. I don't think with much success with Caleb Como. I can't pronounce his last name anymore. So, but I don't think this is a game Northwestern's going to win without a few turnovers with some help from Michigan's offense. I think the maximum that offense scores without field position help is probably going to be 13-15. And I don't think their defense, despite I think a lot of their edge rushes and blitzes getting home, it's going to be much success against Michigan, who's not going to pass much if that's the case. So, especially if it's going to be windy, like I heard it is. So, give me Michigan to win this game, Sean. Pretty unspectacular, like 24-13. I think this game has that written all over it. Now, if Northwestern does get two turnovers, though, I think this game gets real dicey real quick.
Yeah, Northwestern's sort of game plan here has been to find themselves in a close game and then make a big play. Like, and I feel like Michigan, that might be possible here. Like, I don't know if Michigan has like a 30-10 victory here. I think especially with Justice Haynes out, I think Michigan probably doesn't roll, but they win something like 20-13. It's never really in doubt, and they don't really either have to take a lot of chances, and Michigan just ends up with another touchdown. But yeah, I'm gonna go Michigan 20, Northwestern 13. All right, Joe, 3:30 on the Big Ten Network. We've got probably the best game of the week in the conference. That's Mark Gronowski in Iowa going to the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum to play Jaden Mayava and USC. The Trojans not dead yet for the playoff. They absolutely need a victory here. Iowa looking to continue their solid season. USC -6.5 right now, Joe. What do you got for this one?
Yeah, definitely game of the week. Definitely not worthy of Big Ten Network. I think the other game we're going to preview on CBS is the network this game should be on. Uh, I- I'm really interested to see if Iowa can repeat offense performances not last week notwithstanding they've had in the past. If they could do that, I think this game could be really interesting if they play the possession game, something USC did against Michigan. I don't think I'm going to say it, Sean. This might be a game where whoever scores the first TD and Gabe sticks the other might win. I certainly think USC probably has a 70% likelihood to win this game, but they haven't been Iowa yet. I mean, this could be a unique experience for them if Iowa gets up 7-0 or even up two scores, where they're looking at the scoreboard and maybe they try to do a desperate play and they get Phil Parkered. It's extremely possible. So I think the spread on this game's pretty accurate. I think the difference is going to be I think USC's playmakers are going to break one more play than Iowa's will. I think by the nature of it, USC will probably score first. Iowa will kind of hang in there, and then USC delivers the kill shot late. So give me the Trojans to win this one 30-20. I do think they cover that spread with the late score, but an Iowa victory here would not stun me. It'd be really interesting to see where they'd move if because they're 21st with three losses. I don't think they have much of a shot to get back in, but it'd be interesting to see if they could be around the top 15.
Yeah, I don't know if they do. I think we're gonna actually learn a lot about the SEC this weekend. If Alabama and Georgia are both hosting teams that are on the outside, that would be Oklahoma and Texas. I think if the
Yep.
road teams can win that game, there's going to be a million SEC teams at 2 losses, so probably not. But if the right teams win in the SEC and there's 2 spots open for a backdoor Big Ten team like a Michigan or a USC or Iowa, like it's possible. But you're gonna need to win the rest of your games and then get help. But yeah, if Iowa puts themselves in a position where USC has to press and chase a little bit, that's when Iowa defense is at its best. Um, USC, have they really been patient enough this year? I don't think I've watched them enough to answer that. Like
I think they have
if
against Michigan
yeah,
they were, and against
Illinois,
certainly against
their defense
Illinois.
made
Well,
a
and
comeback
the
there.
and the Northwestern game in a way too. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so like they might have to be okay with this game being like 7-3 at halftime, and we talked about Oregon needing to be patient at Kinnick, and they were, and then they found themselves still needing a game-winning drive at the end. So I don't know if USC can. They can probably blow out a lot of teams, but I don't know if that's possible here. I'm gonna go a walk-off field goal for Iowa, 23-20. I
Wow.
I
Okay.
think Iowa's just I don't think USC is going to be able to have the chunk big plays they usually do, and can USC be patient enough to take the 4 or 5 yard runs and then without pushing it too far down the field? All right, that 3:30 game that you mentioned, Joe, the game for the land grant trophy. Even though there are dozens of land grant universities in the United States, 3-6 Penn State against 3-6 Michigan State here at the Spartan Stadium in East Lansing. That would be the visitors of Penn State, Joe, being the 7.5 point favorites. Um, Other than the trophy that gets lost in the dozens of trophies that are in college football, bowl eligibility, I guess, like the loser would be ineligible after this game. So what do you got for this one?
I'm interested to see how MSU responds after just the negativity. And it's not even about the vacated wins they got today. That's pretty irrelevant. It's more you've lost 6 straight games now. You haven't won since September 13th, and it's kind of just been like loss after loss and then hit after hit. So can they respond in this game? Because Penn State's kind of had the same deal. I think Penn State can they like keep their spirits up after that demoralizing loss they had to Indiana, especially at the end. I am willing to believe they can. I don't think effort at any point on this team has been an issue since the Franklin firing. I just think you've played the 1 and 2 teams in the country, and one you played really damn well. So I'm gonna give Penn State the benefit of the doubt because I think there's buy-in there. I don't think Michigan State players are quitting necessarily. I just think it's been so long since they've had a really good performance consistently because I think Penn State had one last week where there's going to be enough belief. I think Penn State gets home enough on Milihojevic. I don't. I think Aiden Childs might also make an appearance just to change it up a little for the Spartans. But give me Penn State to win this one, Sean, 27-16. I think MSU is probably hangs in there for a while, but I don't trust the O line to protect whether it's Childs or Milihojevic back here. And I do believe Childs is going to have to enter into the second half at some point. And I think Penn State and Jim Knowles have a decent game plan to shut down Nick Marsh.
I think Penn State, like, they're going to smell blood in the water here, and I think they win by like 20. Their mentality has been very impressive this year. They were down by, like I said, 20-13 to Indiana. Like, they were headed towards a 20-plus point loss there. They came back and nearly won the game. I think if they can get up early, they can turn Michigan State's crowd against them and cruise to an easy victory. You know, they've had they're 0-6 in the Big Ten. I think they've been like actually outplayed in one half of one of those 6 games. They've been incredibly unlucky down the stretch many times, as we've mentioned on here. But, you know, I think they outplay Michigan State by a ton and win this game by a lot. I think their defense can, you know, make Alessio do things that he's not, you know, supposed to do. Maybe push a few throws too far down the field, trying to get Nick Marsh involved if he's not early. But I think Penn State wins this game by a lot, and 6-6 becomes a real possibility. All right, Joe. Also at 3:30 on Fox Sports 1, we've got Maryland going up to Champaign to play Illinois. Illinois looking for win number 7. Maryland looking for win number 5. Illinois minus 15 here. Don't know if there's much that is going to be notable in this one.
No, I don't think. I think Jacob Washington, kind of like he did against Rutgers, has some great plays, has some not so great plays, but Maryland's defense has enough really not so great plays, and Illinois probably wins this one 34-17.
I'm going to go 40-17, Illinois. All right, Joe, 7 o'clock on Fox Sports 1. We've got Purdue going out to Husky Stadium to play Washington. Huge sort of season-defining loss there for Washington at Camp Randall. Do they have something left? Do they have some pride in their football team? They're 16-point favorites here, 15 and a half. But their goals of their season are not going to be met, but they still have a few games left. They could still ruin Oregon's season. You think, obviously, their mentality here, to me, is so how this game goes is solely dependent on whether they come ready to play or not.
Yeah, and let's face it, Sean, Purdue, Michigan came close to learning a very tough lesson 2 weeks ago. I think Purdue probably played as well as they could for most of that Ohio State game. Um, I don't necessarily see them upset bidding Washington here. I think it can be close. I think that offense can make enough plays to provide Washington 2 opportunities to screw up. It's going to be, is Washington going to screw up twice in this game? That's going to be my real question. If they do, you could see a game much like the one at the Big House 2 weeks ago with Purdue. I'm going to give Jedfish the benefit of the doubt. I don't think they come out necessarily with their hair on fire. I think they come out with a mentality, and maybe if the game gets competitive, it lights a fire under them. I'm looking for a pretty unspectacular Washington victory here, Sean. I think Washington wins this one by a score of 31-21. Uh, I don't think they'll cover. I don't think they'll necessarily look impressive, but I think they'll just do well enough and perhaps they could limp to Oregon and really get fired up for the last like real meaningful game of the year.
Lost in the Luke Fickle headlines was the Jed Fish headlines that he's sort of actively looking at some of these open jobs in the SEC and also in the Big Ten. So potentially some, you know, potentially a little distracted there. Um, but I do think they show up here and they score 30 points. And we talk about their offense again and, you know, how on the season of the whole their stats are going to look all right. But in the biggest moments that they didn't really show up. So I'm going to go Washington 33, Purdue 14. All right, we're going to end the week on NBC, Joe, where UCLA will go to the Horseshoe to play Ohio State. 32.5 point favorites are Ohio State, with Michigan on the horizon, with Indianapolis on the horizon. Uh, Ohio State is probably not going to be hoping that much comes out of this one.
No, I think this is probably another showcase performance for Sayan and the passing game. I think they'll try to establish the run game, like we said early on. Maybe Nico does a few nice things, but I think it might be much like the game in December of 2024, where he was forced to run a lot and forced to run not very far, to be honest. Give me Ohio State to win this one, 41 to 10. Uh, don't really need much of an explanation here. I think
Yeah.
I'd be wasting the viewer's time.
Yep. I'm going to go 37-14. I just think that this is one where you try and get out of there in enough time to get some of your backups some reps. But, you know, with what's on the horizon for them, this is literally meaningless unless they, you know, are losing at halftime or something and they get scared and have to actually play in a close game. But nothing is pointing to that happening. All right, Joe, that's 40 minutes down in football. That leaves about 20 for some basketball talk here in the Big Ten. We're a week plus into the year. Most teams have played 3 games. There's been a few surprises, a few disappointments. I'm going to pull up Torvik, which I can sort by the Big Ten. And, Joe, let's go into a team that you've been surprised by this year in the Big Ten.
Not necessarily surprised. I'm more surprised they're clicking right now, and that's Illinois. I think the win they had over Texas Tech Tuesday night was probably one of the better ones in the conference. I know people could call it MSU's, and I think certainly they'd be my second most surprising. And again, not the fact they're good that they're clicking, but back to Illinois here, Sean. There's just too many guys on this team who could score. Ivasic, Boswell, now Stojakovic is coming off the bench, scoring 20 a night. This is a scary team, Sean. I know they live and die by the three, and certainly that's gonna. I mean, sorry, last year they lived and died by the three in a lot of these games. This year, I don't think that's the case at all. I think they're getting quality shots off. I think Boswell's doing a better job facilitating the offense, and perhaps this Illinois team is going to be like the one last year, except more consistent. Which, if that Illinois team last year found consistency from where they were like in December and January, that would have been an even scarier team than Michigan or Michigan State last year.
Yeah, they are the top team in Torvik now in the Big Ten, Joe, at third. And their win against Texas Tech last night was incredibly impressive. Tomislav Ivisic, who might be their best player, did not play. And on the other side of the ball, like JT Toppin and Christian Anderson are a top 5 dynamic duo in the country. And they ended up winning by 4, but they were the better team in that game. And it took sort of a heroic second half effort for Texas Tech to stay in it. And Illinois picked up a huge win, but they're really fun to watch. Like they have their roles already. Stojakovic is just like a great one-on-one player. You have Merkovich at the 5. You still have a couple players from last year like Humrickhouse and Boswell, like you mentioned. But yeah, Illinois is really, really fun so far. And I don't know if, like, with Michigan and Purdue potentially not looking as great as we've expected, I think maybe Illinois might be the favorite to win this league right now. I know it's early, but those 2 other teams, Joe, that I mentioned have been a little bit underwhelming so far. Now with Purdue, they are 2-0, and they were caught in a dogfight with Oakland, and they didn't cover their first game. But Trey Kaufman-Renn didn't play. So I think maybe we can ease the concerns a little bit. But on the other hand, Joe, Purdue's new pieces that were supposed to, elevate this team from a 4 seed to back to the top. Oscar Clough, Omer Meyer, Daniel Jacobson, like they are not making the impact that people thought they would so far. So, to me, that whether them three can provide decent roles is whether Purdue will be a 1 seed or a 4 seed this year. But what are your thoughts on the Boilers so far?
I still think they're returning core with Lawyer, when TKR gets back, Lawyer, Braden Smith, and CJ Cox. I think that could be ample enough to carry them while these guys figure it out. Certainly through non-con, it's not going to matter. In conference play, by December, these guys, and certainly by January, these guys have to have it figured out if Purdue's going to even be top four of the league. If these guys don't progress, and I'm not saying they won't. It's 2 games in, so I don't want to be reactive or melodramatic. If they don't, though, Sean, Purdue might have a year like last year, but they go on runs, they go on 5-game win streaks, and then go on 3-game losing streaks. And last year, you wouldn't have thought that possible in February, and it happened. I mean, look at that stretch they had in February when they lost to Michigan, Wisconsin at home, and
Indiana was in
games
there
like
too.
that. Indiana too. So I, I don't think it's much of a concern right now, Sean. I think with TKR back, maybe these guys have less of a role and can play more loose, but not impressed by Purdue's early returns and certainly not impressed with Michigan's early returns without overreacting,
And
without being declarative.
Purdue was in a game with Oakland. Like, you know, mid-major teams go into every game thinking they've got a chance, and the way that mentally that they go into those games is every media timeout, get to the next one, still on the game. That is sort of what, and then they found themselves in the game with 7.5 minutes left. Like that could have been really bad for Purdue. Luckily for them, they got the job done down the stretch. They do have Alabama tomorrow night on the road, and the way Alabama's looked, that is going to be an incredibly tough game. Like Alabama looks as good as they've been um, over the past few years. Purdue did win last year at Mackey, so it's a return game of that. But like I think Purdue loses that one, and they're gonna have to not look at things like they're what they're gonna do is what they're gonna do. But a couple of the non stars are gonna have to step up. That was why they struggled at times last year, and it looks like that if they lose some games this year, that's gonna be why. But on the other hand, Joe, with Michigan, you were there last night at LCA. They found themselves in a crazy game against Wake Forest. They were up double digits at halftime, looked like they were going to cruise to a 20-point victory. A second half implosion, which saw them down 7 and 4 minutes left. They dragged themselves across the line to get to overtime and then win by 1. What a roller coaster of a performance from Michigan. What were your thoughts seeing that one in person?
I think taking 2 games as a whole, when this team shoots well, I don't think there are many teams in America that will beat this team. However, when they shoot poorly, 4 of 25 from three, they're anyone's taking in the Power Five. I do think that this year they have a bigger post advantage, even than with Vlad Golden last year with the Diamara. I think the fact he does not bring down the ball much for turnovers is a clear progression from what he did last year. I know he was sick with mono or whatever it was and really couldn't develop much with Mick Cronin. I think he's certainly a better player than he was last year. I think Dusty utilizes him better, and I feel like he wants to switch him off more with Merez Johnson. So I think look to see more of that. Michigan rebounding this year clearly took a step up. It was concerning to see in the second half that while when they were more intense, they were rebounding and they kind of lapsed in the middle, like, you know, 15-minute to 5-minute mark in the second half. Wake Forest dominated the boards then. This is a team that has to fix the turnover issues, though, Sean. Uh, Elliot Cadeau had some lazy passes, and I think he overall played a really good game. 17 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists. But, it can't be a situation where you're turning the ball over because with this offense, if you run plays completely, you're going to score. So I think Michigan's just got to slow down, hit their shots, and I'll give them this. Perhaps it was the NBA arena messing with their 3-point shooting. Now, if this is another problem in the next 3 games, then we're gonna have a totally different discussion.
The Michigan conversation is really complex, I think. Mara has been a absolute revelation so far. He was pretty good at times for UCLA last year, like you said, Joe, but his knock was that he couldn't play more than 20 minutes a game. He played 37 minutes last night, and he was a problem defensively for Wake Forest. I don't know how many blocks he had, but he probably altered or blocked 12 or 13 shots, and he is, having a safety valve back there is huge. You can be more aggressive on the 3 point line. You can go for more steals. But yeah, he has been really impressive so far. And I think Cadeau has too. I mean, that was the Cadeau and Mara show at the end of regulation and overtime. And Cadeau is going to get a lot of assists, especially with an automatic dunk lob Mara. Like, Cadeau's going to have some high assist games this year. But the problem for me has been with their 3 and 4 spots, Joe. They started the jumbo package in this one with Yaxel at the 3, Merez at the 4. Shetter came in off the bench, played some 3. Like, I don't know if that fit really works. I think Yaxel's good enough where he can probably play a solid 3, and you know, but defensively he's not a good defender at the 3, and he wasn't even on the floor in the biggest moments yesterday. So, do you think Dusty will continue to do the jumbo lineup, or do you think he'll try and push Yaxel to the 4 and then maybe have Merez and Mara switch out at the 5?
I think the vision should have always been that, to be honest with you, Sean. I didn't see Perez and Adai sharing the court for significant periods of time. I get it. If it's the last possession of a game and you need a rebound, you have to do the jumbo package. I totally get it. But to see the game start off that way was pretty interesting. I don't think it's something they should go to. I mean, they might do it against the mid majors because it sure as bleep worked against Oakland, but I don't think it's going to work against teams of bigger size, and even the Michigan States, certainly the Purdue's of the world wouldn't even bother. I think Yaxel at the four is his natural position, and I think it forces him to shoot less 3 pointers. I think he was decent enough with that at UAB. I only wanted shooting the really good looks, and even those haven't looked great so far, even in preseason. So I think you want him attacking the offensive glass. I think he's more of a offensive glass threat even than Perez at times. If you're gonna have Perez and Mara in.
And the thing with Yaxel, Joe, is that just because he can play the wing doesn't mean he should. Like, he was sort of the 5 at UAB last year, and like, he is a great scorer inside, and especially if he doesn't have the other team's 5 covering him. Like, I think you've got to get him more minutes at the 4. I think with McKenney and Namari and Gale and Cadeau, like, you probably can get away with that. Or if you have him and Shetter on the floor, one of them plays the 3, the other plays the 4. But I think that, the Danny Wolf last year, he was just a unicorn. Like, there's not very many players like that. Like, Yaxel doesn't have to be handling the ball on handoffs and ball screens as much as he probably is okay at it. He should probably get some post touches and some face ups from 15 feet and all that. But that is what we have to monitor for Michigan going forward. Now, they still got the victory, and I think Wake Forest is a better team than people are giving them credit for. But at times it seemed a little bit clunky, and I've seen plenty of that over the last 4 years at Indiana. Like, Yaxel at the 3, that sounds a lot like a Mackenzie Ibaka at the 3 to me. Um, you know, when your 3 best players are all forwards, and you want to get them out on the floor as much as possible, that might not be the best thing for the team. So that is what we're looking forward to for Michigan. But Michigan State also got a big victory, Joe, against Arkansas at the Izzone, and Mike and I did talk about this one yesterday. So I don't need to talk about that again from my end. But what did you see here as Michigan State picked up a 69-66 victory against John Calipari and the Hogs?
I think, you might have another Jace Richardson, not in terms of style of play, but certainly another freshman contributing and contributing right away. I think this is a really promising sign for the Spartans. Uh, Now, do I think that they're as good as they were last year? I don't think so. I think the fact they still can't shoot the three all that well is concerning. It's going to be concerning later on in the tournament. Should this team have Final Four aspirations? But looking at it just 2 or 3 games into the season, there's a lot to like here. I do think that depth could still be a problem, even with Cam Ward. I think Fears is doing a great job facilitating the offense again. And, it's kind of similar to Michigan in a way. Cooper and Kohler at the same time, is that going to work? I think if Kohler continues to shoot the three decently well, it can, but if he gets in shooting droughts, I don't know, Sean. That's my one big criticism of this team if they're going to have to score. But in terms of rebounding, in terms of everything else, I think this is a typical Michigan State game. Out rebounding Arkansas is a great sign. I thought they did a really good job containing their bigs and their forwards. And to be honest with you, Sean, I didn't think they'd win this game. I thought it'd be a
Yeah.
really close loss, and they did all the things to win a close game like this, especially with the home crowd. The Tal incident after, I really don't care. That's just some Instagram, YouTube short clip. But MSU, man, I got to tell you, winning there this year, I'd venture of the 10 games they have there, they'll win at least 7 or 8 of them because of that home field advantage, home court advantage, and the fact that they do all the things the ISO teams do. They win the marches, they win the rebounding, and even if they're not shooting the three well, they're going to find other ways to win.
Yeah, they've only lost 3 times there in the last 2 years, by my count. Last year they did lose to Mike Woodson, and the year before, one of those losses was to James Madison on opening day. So it's always going to be hard to go to the zone and win. It's just going to be a similar product to what we've seen from Michigan State. We've talked about it over the years, Joe, how good Michigan State is in terms of the Big Ten is a good barometer, and how good the league is. Last year, the league didn't have any great teams. They ended up being the best team by multiple games. I think if they're, I think Michigan State is in the 15 to 20 range in terms of the country, right? So is that the sixth or seventh best Big Ten team, or is that the second or third? Like that it's going to be a good measure of the league. And they do have a tough one coming up with Kentucky at the Champions Classic, and they have North Carolina on Thanksgiving. Then they have Duke coming up there. Like they are going to get a 4 really good chances at high profile wins here in the non-con, and like that performance, they didn't even play as good as they can, Joe. They were just 1 for 14 from 3, 24 of 47 from 2. They didn't get to the free throw line a ton. They missed a few late in the game that probably would have put it away a little sooner. But you know, Arkansas has some freshman guards, and Michigan State disrupts you from your stuff. Like you've got to have some isolation one-on-one ballers to win against them, and of course, a couple teams do, and I don't think the amount of wins that Michigan State had last year in the Big Ten, we're going to see that again. But they're a good solid team. All right, Joe. As we go back to the Big Ten here, there's a couple of other teams I want to talk about. And I do think that mine deserves a little bit of love here. Indiana's 3-0 with a win against Milwaukee tonight. We talked about their offense in the preview app. It's been amazing so far. They have scored 99 points in all 3 games. They beat Marquette by 23 on Sunday in Chicago. They've covered against Alabama A&M and Milwaukee. And Joe, this Indiana product looks so much better than over the past few years. But what are your thoughts on the Hoosiers so far?
Well, certainly a lot more entertaining than Woodson Ball. I do think Indiana. I was talking to a coworker who was a Hoosier alum, big time basketball fan, obviously too, Charlie. This is a team that I think could score with anyone. I think when they get in shooting droughts, it's going to be a tough time. My one concern, Sean, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts, is the post play. Is that going to hurt them toward the end? Probably in some of the more high profile games, but this is a team, Sean, that I don't think is going to necessarily go on a lot of offensive droughts as a team. Individual players always will, but I think they have enough options here with Lamar Wilkerson, Tucker DeVries, even guys like Alexis and Sisley off the bench, where perhaps they could score like 80 a night. Maybe they'll lose 84 to 82, but I think this is a team that could probably get up to 80 a night.
Yeah, offensively, they've been really good. They've made a ton of shots, and it's cut off here on the screen, but they've made 34 threes. No, sorry. 38 threes in 3 games, Joe. They made 12 in one game last year. They're 10, 14 and 14. And the thing is they're open shots, right? When you get good shooters open shots, like they're going to go in. And Defensively, obviously, there are a few concerns. Physicality is definitely one of them. Um, they've fouled a lot so far in these 3 games, and Milwaukee actually had a few like really big guards today, and they still were able to sort of get to the hoop and have the contested layup. Sometimes they get the whistle, sometimes they don't. But yeah, that is something to look out for. They do have a solid 9-man rotation, so they can absorb some foul trouble like they did against Marquette. But offensively, it doesn't really matter who's on the floor. Tucker DeVries played 30 minutes against Marquette, and I mentioned this with Mike yesterday. Tucker DeVries in 30 minutes against Marquette was plus 11. They won the game by 23. So that means plus 12 when he wasn't on the floor. And that, he is probably the best player, but like at the same time they're pretty much as good if he's not on the floor. So, as you see the schedule here, they have a couple bye games surrounded by Kansas State at home here, where there'll be heavy favorites. They'll try and get maybe a few more players some minutes, get Nick Dorn going. He made his first appearance tonight, I think only 8 or 9 minutes, but they do have a really loaded December. So if they can get through this stretch here at the end of November, continuing to improve their metrics, we've talked about that a number of times over the years, Joe. It's way easier to get good numbers and hold on to them than to try and rescue bad ones. And they've covered in all 3 of their games. They're up to 18th in KenPom, and they are at 25 on Torvik. So that it just makes it so much easier to make the NCAA tournament when you're like that. So I think if Indiana can, they have Minnesota and Penn State early in Big Ten play, Louisville and Kentucky. If they keep playing solid, they're going to have a chance to win a few of those games. And if they are to win, 2 or 3 of those games, then we're looking at probably a top 25 team. If they don't, then we're probably looking at an 8 or 9 seed in the tournament. But hard to not like what you've seen so far from Indiana. All right, Joe, we've got a bunch of other teams in this league. We had a few losses towards the bottom. We had a few close calls and bye games. Let's pick another team to wrap us up with today.
Ooh, that's a tough one. In this case, shot, I'll probably go with UCLA.
Yeah.
Um, Pretty unspectacular so far. I'm gonna point them out though as this shot. I do think they're the team that could blow this league up in the sense that, we're all kind of looking at Michigan, Purdue, Illinois, perhaps Michigan State's getting into the fold. I don't think UCLA got a lot of love in the offseason. I don't really know why, because I think Donovan Dent was probably the more significant acquisitions you'll find in the portal. If Xavier Booker pops off for them, this could be a very interesting team. I think initial returns are pretty mediocre considering the competition. Only 4 points against West Georgia. But if Tyler Bilodeau, Eric Daly, and these other guys could get going, I don't know. You might have something here.
Yeah, I don't. With Mick Cronin teams over the years, they haven't like looked the best in bye games, and they've figured it out in conference play, and that even goes back to their Pac-12 days, and then last year in the Big Ten. But will they take a step from last year? They should with the roster that they have. Like Donovan Dent is a better player than he's had since the Final Four team, but they have Nebraska on a not Nebraska. Arizona on a neutral on Friday. They play Gonzaga on a neutral too. Like those games are going to be big. Like the way those teams look, you'd probably take the other team in those games, but you have Washington and Oregon early in Big Ten play. Like I think if they turn out to be a good team, and all right, everybody gets a free pass in a bye game where they don't look great, but on the other hand, like bye games have been with margins and all the numbers that we can see now. We can see what you're supposed to do and what you actually do. But close wins and bye games have been a alarm bell for other teams, and they've proven out to be correct. That team's just not very good. But we'll have to see whether this UCLA team like really fits defensively, they've not been very good so far. They just won game under 1 point per possession, and that was West Georgia, but 1 point per possession against Pepperdine, and then 1.01 against Eastern Washington. So, that is going to be a big number to watch out for them on the defensive end, and they're going to have to defend to compete in this league. But Joe, just over the hour mark, that is going to be it for us in Megapod. We're going to get back to the usual, probably 3 videos next week, maybe even another one if basketball continues to deserve more headlines. But thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.